and you get the people on the other extreme who want to say that we are nothing but ethnic Serbs, and what's more, we're the purest of the Serbs. We really are the pure Serbs. My own view is that these positions, these extreme positions, are both highly unrealistic. That the reality is that people blended in these areas. That there's a great commonality, cultural commonality. I was mentioning at the time of the Basici, you know, the rulers. These people were, most historians agree, of mixed Serbo-Albanian descent. There were large areas of both geographical overlap, as borders fluctuated, certainly a cultural overlap. You know, I think these political borders are extremely artificial. Another area where you see a great deal of commonality in traditional patterns of life with parts of Montenegro is in parts of Herzegovina, now in Republika Srpska. But these people share features that are very similar, could continue right down into certainly into northern Albania. So my argument about why you see these figures at this particular time is because I think that this ambivalence has so much allowed people, because there is this inherent dual narrative going on historically, and it was able to go on so long, partly because the two states were separate, that it enables the political elite and people to present and cast this narrative in a way that suits a particular age, so that historical factors, geographical factors of course come into it, historical factors come into it, but so do political factors. And the best example of that, of course, is the way Prince Nicola tried to manipulate things in this way. Đukanović then also tried to present Montenegrins much more in the Montenegrin way, so you'll get fluctuating views. It'll be very interesting to see in this forthcoming census. I expect we'll see, you know, rather more people calling themselves Montenegrins. An interesting aside on Đukanovic's political evolution was, and I didn't personally see this, but it was described to me by a journalist who wrote written quite a lot about Kosovo, Tim Judah, was at a certain point on Đukanovic's desk a photograph of King Nicola suddenly started to appear, you know, the sort of reinforcing of the Montenegrin identity. And of course statues then started to appear too in Podgorica, a great big statue of King Nicola. So I think ambivalence in particular allows political identity to be manipulated, and elites understand this and buy into it. And that's why you see these very shifting figures. And they are likely to, my argument, I think I would like to imagine that the argument may shift to some degree back, particularly as the younger population begin to come voting age, or are now voting age, census age, and will register, because at the moment the tide seems to be running in Montenegro's favour. Now, I think also people like to be on a winning side. It's like a football team. If things are going better, there's a certain tendency to identify yourself with that. And, you know, there was certainly a strong movement, and understandably so, after the war in Montenegro, people did want to differentiate themselves from Serbs. You didn't want to be seen as part of a pariah nation, so it was quite... But I think it is a very fluctuating issue. One sees different ones at different times.
Any last questions? Yes,
if you don't mind. You stated that 30-some% identify themselves as Orthodox, while
76%.
76, and others identify themselves as Montenegrins and Orthodox.
76% of Montenegro and Orthodox, 24% roughly. They were the figures at the time. We don't know, of course, with the census having been undertaken in 2003, as other minorities.
Okay. Well, when they decide to choose how they want to be viewed by the international community, what is the difference when they choose to say Orthodox instead of Montenegrin? What is that line, like how they want to be viewed by others? How do you see that?
I don't think that's been an operative split, if you like, particularly. Although it's interesting, obviously, at the point of time, I suppose one would have to say, in 1989, at the point in which you had this this nationalistic fervor, part of the Milosevic-sponsored project going on in Montenegro. Of course, people were registering much more as Orthodox as against Serb and Montenegrin. But I think that overall the cleavage has been between people who call themselves Serbs and Montenegrins, or who've been for Montenegrin independence and against Montenegrin independence. And that's certainly been true throughout the 20th century, and I think one could probably say since 1878. So I don't think that the Orthodox, the cleavage has really been between the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox, because those people calling themselves Montenegrins, particularly since 1997, have seen it in their interests as to diminish divisions, certainly political divisions, between Montenegrins and the minorities, i.e. the Bosniaks, who make up roughly about 13.5% of the population, and Albanians, who I think are about 5.3% of the population in Montenegro. So I don't think that's...
There are Bosniaks, quite a lot.
Yeah, quite a lot of Bosniaks. Yeah, indeed. It's quite a big area. And it's a very interesting question that as Chris was saying, I'm now interested in looking at Sanjak. And it's very interesting to compare and contrast the way these two areas are going. And my impression is, it's something I have to study more, that there are far deeper problems and discontents on the Serbian side of the Sanjak than on the Montenegrin side, even though economic development on the Montenegrin side has lagged behind. And of course, although I didn't go into it because it was far too long, during the war period there were, as we know, both during the Second World War and during the Yugoslav wars, there were very significant persecutions of Bosniaks, including murders and expulsions of Bosniaks in these areas. So it has been quite a significant step to overcome, largely since 1997, a lot of this ill feeling.
Perhaps on that note we should conclude. I would observe that, as neighbours to the Sanjak, we all hope that that region deals with its identity and other issues in ways that are peaceful and don't spill over here. Perhaps in a few years' time you'll come back and talk to us about the Sanjak.
I'd love to be in a position to do that, because I think it's a fascinating and complex ethnic situation, and it's also one which I think very interestingly, you have again dual concepts of different remembered historical narratives. One person, why do we call it, why does one lot call it Rashka, and if you call it Rashka, your version of history and your historical memories will be different from if you call it Sanjak. So it's an interesting thread.
Thank you again, Lady Roberts, for a fascinating talk.